So welcome to episode 16 of Rubbish Talk podcast with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
And today we have Charlie Devine, who, for people in the waste industry, will know Charlie, who appears to have been in the waste industry forever, or for certainly as long as me. Charlie is the waste service manager for the Waste Partnership in Dundee City Council. So we have a great chat with Charlie later on. But first, as usual, we're going to run through a few of the highlights we've picked up, or the news in the big bad world of waste over the last few weeks. So one that drew my attention, and apologies for bringing it up so quickly, is vapes. So Zurich, the insurance company, has been pushing quite a lot of information out about the number of vapes and the danger of vapes, because obviously I think the insurance companies must be realising that it's starting to cause them a fortune with bin lorries going on fire, waste facilities going on fire, and there's quite a big disposal issue ongoing. One of the interesting things about their promotion was they were suggesting that the government should be trying to do something about vapes, and really at the end of the day it's for the producers and the retailers to actually fund the take back schemes to actually take these things back in and recycle them properly. So it's, from my point of view, it's quite interesting that the insurance companies are actually starting to realise there's a big issue here, and maybe we need to do something about it.
Yeah, and did you hear about there's all that stuff about Leavesey and the fire there in the recycling facility? What a nightmare.
Yeah, so that's a new facility that's only opened in the last couple of months. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I do know there were no injuries or sort of loss of life, which is a good, but obviously it's caused a bit of damage to plant and equipment, and that'll take them a bit of time to sort out. So, it's no wonder the insurance companies are starting to get nervous, and there's no saying in that fire at Leavesey was started by vapes, but I think with the sheer number of fires we're getting in the sector, there's probably a good chance that something like a vape has caused the problem.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a lessons learned or something from there once they've worked out, what happened and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not good. Fire and waste facilities is not good.
I'm kind of going on to something a bit different, and it's about whales, as in the big things that live in the sea, and how sad it was about all the whales that were they washed ashore on the Isle of Lewis last weekend or the other weekend, and it was like 15 of the 55 whales were alive, and that's just like I don't know whether they know why they beached on the beach. But it kind of got me thinking, and I think something also came up in a question as well, is what do you do with a dead whale? I mean, how do you classify it? Is it an EWC code? Do you take it to a landfill site? What actually do you do with all these whales that are stranded on the beach? And there was a discussion about the EWC codes on I think it was a CIWM thing recently, and it's like, do you class them as fallen? Well, I think there was quite a number of discussions around what to call them, including, is it bulky waste? Well, I guess it's bulky, but is it really bulky waste? But is it classed as under an EWC code? Is it waste? I don't know. It was another interesting discussion there.
I spotted that thread as well, and I thought it was the most waste management type of thing that we ever get, with this big long thread about how we code waste. And for people that don't know, so every waste type that's disposed in the UK is meant to have an EWC code, a European Waste Catalogue code, that sort of describes its origin and the risks associated with it. And the problem with a whale that's washed up on a beach is none of the EWC codes actually really fit the whale. It does remind me of a story, Jane, from a long time ago when I used to work at a landfill site, that we had exactly that. We had a whale delivered in a skip, and the procedure the vets wanted we were to dig a hole in the landfill site and then tip the dead whale into the hole and then bury it over. And for whatever reason, it was delivered one day and then it was only been disposed the next day. And we had a young apprentice, so we took great delight in asking him to go around that night and check that all the skips were empty on the site. So we duly sent him out about 3 o'clock, just as it was getting dark, to go around and check all the skips. For him to come running back to say there was a whale in the skips.
Oh, that's mean.
It was mean. It was quite mean, but that's that was a long time ago. And on the topic about dead things on the beach, I regularly commute by walking along Ayr Beach, and at the moment Ayr Beach has got a strip of jellyfish, which is about 2 meters wide, running the whole length of the beach, and from what I know, is actually running much further down the coast towards down towards Dunur and so on, of these massive big jellyfish that are, as big as the size of a football, and there's just a continuous line of them. Now, I've seen that in the past in the summer, but not to the extent that there are at the moment. So I wouldn't think the council would plan to clean them up, because they're pretty much just water and they'll disappear shortly. But if they do have to clean them up, there'll be a fair old number of skips of dead jellyfish to be taken away.
Oh, I don't think I'll be going swimming off Ayr Beach in the near future then.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The other one we were looking at as well is, there's a lot of companies, a lot of organisations are trying to look at new ways of packaging, and I suppose trying to cut down on plastic and trying to recycle. And there's a few things that we've picked up, just to think, well, is it really recyclable? Or is it just a greenwash? So I think Sainsbury's has removed plastic trays, it's saying, and they're using a cardboard alternative, which is fine. That's very good. You can just wash the blood off the meat and then chuck it in your paper bin. I'm not sure that's really that good in that instance, but they're also saying it uses 70% less plastic. So it's like, wait, so it still contains 30% plastic. So where is that plastic? Because, you still got, presumably, you're still sealing the cardboard trays to stop the blood soaking in or the meat soaking in or whatever into the cardboard. So I guess it's just having that material be recycled. It's okay cutting down on plastics and claiming it be recycled, but is it really recyclable? We also found, we do a lot of waste composition analysis, and we found a new product last week, which is quite interesting. We haven't seen one before, and it might not be a new product, but it's new to us. And it was a drinks container under the Flavita brand. And basically it was a plastic container, fine, but then it had an aluminium top, where you use the top there, aluminium top, and it's like, well, how do you separate those? Who's going to recycle them? I'm not quite sure what the purpose behind that was.
It's going to be interesting from the sorting equipment and the sorting sites, Jane, in terms of, does it pick it off as aluminium because picks the aluminium, or does it pick it off as plastic because of the plastic body? And then, as you say, neither of them are going to want it because it's mixed.
Yeah, and then there was another one as well, the vodka, Absolute Vodka, are now going into, they're looking at, says bottles don't grow on trees, so our aim is to produce bottles from sustainable sourced wood fibre. Think strong and sturdy paper, turning fresh pine into iconic containers. Is that better than recycling glass? I just, have they really kind of thought about it? And then what happens at the end of it? There must be some plastic in there to stop all the vodka dripping out. So how would you recycle that as well? So it's interesting whether the actual product producers of the product or the packaging actually do think about the actual long term in the end. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things for me there, Jim. There's numerous products like that, and that's just three that, in theory they're recyclable, but in practice, you know, uh, are are the councils, are the waste companies going to actually separate out a separate stream for absolute vodka bottles? The realities are not. The reality is they can only separate the waste into so many waste streams. And then once you do get to separate it out, how are you actually going to, can you actually physically recycle it? And I think with some of these things, it's probably, yes, you can, but it's going to be pretty hard. So there needs to be a bit more joined up thinking between the producers that are putting these materials onto the market and the waste sector and the recycling sector. But I think we'll be quite old before that happens, I think.
Yeah. Oh well. We keep going on. We keep banging on.
I know. Anyway, I'm gonna promote a podcast again, and it's actually the same podcast as I probably promoted a couple of episodes ago. So the leading podcast with Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, they very recently interviewed Fergal Sharkey, who many of you will know from the Undertones, and his big thing, his big passion now, by a little bit by chance, I think, is he is a fly fisherman, and he was responsible. He was the chair of the angling company, and he realised the river quality was getting poorer and poorer. So they started taking on the local water company, the sewage company, and he's become a bit of a campaigner, a bit of a legend about challenging the sewage companies about their, their pretty poor practice in terms of discharges to water. And it was a really interesting interview. It was really scathing, actually, of Ofwat as a regulator, and it was pretty scathing of Environment Agency. In fact, he took Environment Agency to court because he thought they weren't doing what they needed to be doing. But one of the amazing facts he came out with is that London is actually in the top 10 cities in the world that's going to run out of drinking water because we're managing the resource so poorly. And I just thought that was incredible. You're up against you're up against hot countries or hot cities compared with, you genuinely think the UK that we're not going to run out of water. But certainly an interesting podcast, and we'll put the link up as with everything, the links to the products as well that we mentioned there. We'll put links up as well. So if you are interested, you can have a listen. And just skipping back to the products, actually, love to see products that are out there that are trying to do the right thing environmentally, but maybe not quite hitting the mark. New products, new ideas you see there, or things that are good, and positive for the sector. So
yeah, because we want to be positive as well. I mean, they're all trying, aren't they? We're not really picking holes totally. It's just trying to make sure people are thinking about how to recycle it at the end of the day. It's easy saying yes, it's recyclable, but everything's recyclable in its own way.
Well, I think one of the ones that I can't actually remember which supermarket is doing their mince, like packaged mince, just in a vacuum pack, and that alone cuts down. So instead, in the past, it used to be in a plastic tray. So just having it in a vacuum pack is actually using less plastic. So that they are sort of helping cut down the amount of plastic produced. So there are some good things going on. I think that was all our sort of news and updates for this week, apart from the rubbish talk itself. In terms of listening figures, we're good downloads recently. Lots of positive downloads. So if you are new to the podcast, quite happy to hear your feedback. Quite happy if there's things that we've not explained or we've not covered, or you like us to cover, then by all means get in touch. One of the things we've been quite interested in looking at the age profile. For a while there, we were sitting with the main age profile that downloaded the podcast was 45 to 59-year-olds, so the old gets, the old ones. But we've got a fair bit of a peek at the younger audience, there's a big increase in listeners from the 23 to 27-year-old, and there's also an increase in 35 to 44 years old. So I'm not quite sure why that's a split, but that's a split we get from the software we load it onto. And I've actually just noticed that the female downloads are actually now higher than the male.
Oh, that's even better.
So there you go. They're now 47%, and males are down to 43%. So males, come on, we need to redress that balance. So we'll pass you over to Charlie Devine.
Hi, Charlie. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jane. Thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. Welcome to Rubbish Talk. So what we're going to do is just have a chat around yourself and your job and what's happening and all about how you got into the industry. So could you start off with giving us a bit of background about who you currently work for and about the organisation? Would be good.
Certainly, Jane. So I'm the service manager for the Waste Partnership with Dundee City Council, which also incorporates waste partnership workings for Angus Council as well. So basically I look after the residual waste treatment facility and contract on behalf of both councils. So it's a public-private partnership that we manage.
Okay, that'll keep you busy.
Definitely. There's a lot happening, as you can imagine. Lots of changes.
Yeah, so what kind of changes have you been dealing with? What kind of things has been happening?
Lots. Well, there's some longer term strategic stuff in terms of obviously changes, like some of the stuff that's come out of the Incineration in Scotland review, for instance, some of the potential changes for feedstock, what happens in a long-term arrangement with the contract, things like that. But there's also day-to-day stuff that changes, things like vapes and batteries and potential fires and issues that happen on a day-to-day basis. So we keep ourselves quite busy.
I can imagine we've been having lots of talks about vapes and fires over the last few Rubbish Talk podcasts. So yeah, we can understand the issues there. So in terms of the organisation that you work for, that takes the waste from Angus and Dundee City Council area. Is that what the sort of organisation does? Is that the idea?
Certainly, yes. It's a German company called MVV, and the local company is called MVV Environmental Bordeaux Limited. So that's our sort of a main contractor for the waste treatment disposal. A really good working relationship with them, ideal team of people to work with, and we do tend to work really well together, which is one of the key aspects of these types of contracts, to make sure that there's a good kind of working relationship between the contractor and the client. So we help to manage that relationship quite well in conjunction with them.
Sorry, Jane, just the interest, Charlie, what sort of tonnage per annum are you dealing with, or is that contract dealing with?
A contract, well, the plant itself is consented for about 110,000 tonnes a year, so we take up quite a big margin of that, and then obviously the contractor uses the rest of that to offer a disposal service for primarily commercial and industrial waste within the Tayside and Dundee area. So again, it fully utilises the facility and offers a wider sort of a option for other organisations to dispose of their waste properly.
It's a lot of waste, isn't it?
It is.
It's a lot. So as you can imagine, and we are relatively small in terms of the wider waste community in Scotland, so it gives you an idea of how much stuff there actually is out there. And it's purely residual waste as well, so we try and extract as much recycling and reuse from the material before it gets to us.
So that's interesting, because we haven't really sort of focused on energy from waste much, have we, as during the podcast? So in terms of energy from waste, I guess it's trying to let people know what that actually means. So what we're doing, or what you're doing from Dundee and Angus, is taking the residual waste, which is absolutely taking out all the recyclables and stuff like that, and then bringing it into the facility. And then what happens to it from there?
Certainly from there. So it obviously goes into storage, and then it's basically mixed and put through a highly efficient boiler system to extract the heat and obviously turn that into steam to help generate the electricity. So it's as modern a plant as we'll get at the moment, and it's as efficient as it can get, but also to try and do good things with some of the residues as well. So obviously the incinerator bottom ash, any metals, and some of the fly ash material as well, the APCR, atmospheric control residues, are again, treated. So we've got very little, if any, landfill from the facility, which makes it obviously one of the, as I say, the most modern, the most suitable for the type of treatment that we've got at the moment.
It's
That's
quite an
excellent.
interesting site historically, that, Charlie, as well, isn't it? Because it was an incinerator, and then so there's currently 2 incinerators on site, or waste energy facilities on site, isn't there?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, that's actually, this is the one that we're operating at the moment, is the 3rd facility there's been on that site. So it goes way back into the late 80s, early 90s for a facility that was already there, and that was replaced with the original Baldovie site that still runs at the moment. So it's an older technology that the company, MVV, the company who've got our main contract, have actually taken the plant over and invested in it to try and sort of get some more, I suppose, more use out of the site as well. But obviously it means that we've got quite a healthy capacity in terms of waste, being able to deal with the waste that arrives at the site. Also, it helps in terms of any outages or breakdowns that we have, because we have an alternative site that we can use in the event of any of these contingencies.
So how much energy is produced then? I mean, from the waste that you actually collect in Angus and Dundee, in terms of how many houses or whatever you can provide electricity to, what's the sort of equivalent so that people can?
It's round about, in the plant itself, round about 10 megawatts, so round about 20,000 houses that you could power round about in average for that. So it's a healthy sort of a portion of energy back into the community as well, but that's fed straight back to the grid again for redistribution.
So much sense, doesn't it? You've got your waste, which is just waste, and then you can bring it into a facility, make energy to, like you say, for 20,000 homes. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And sort of a longer term, it would be good, because obviously in Dundee we've invested quite heavily in electric vehicles. So, and a number of those are now refuse collection vehicles as well. So longer term, it would be good to use some of that energy to charge these vehicles up, and at least get the use of the energy for collecting the waste again the following day. So that's part of a sort of a longer term plans to try and move forward with initiatives like that.
And the plan also was to try and use the waste heat, Charlie, wasn't it? But to the tyre,
yeah,
can't remember the name of the tyre company.
Definitely. Well, we're fortunate enough that infrastructure is there, and hopefully we'll be able to sell that heat and steam on to the kind of wider kind of Michelin Innovation Park that's been developed in the former Michelin tyre site. And that's ongoing at the moment, so that would be part of the longer term plans for that, and also any other opportunities that may arise in the future to try and use that excess heat for the benefits of the wider community.
I'm just thinking getting a guest along from NVV might be a good guest for us in the future, Charlie. Although thinking about it, I do have somebody from another incineration waste energy company possibly lined up for a future one. So I'm sure, although we've not covered energy from waste before, I'm sure we'll catch up. Moving on, Charlie, I've known you for a good few years, but I'm not quite sure I know the story about what brought you into the waste management sector. Was it by chance or was it planned?
It was purely by accident, Alistair, to be honest with you. So originally I started off in the construction industry, so I was an apprentice joiner for a while. So and the company went bust, so I just ended up going about doing random jobs in construction industry, and ended up in the soft drinks industry for a while doing van sales when I was younger, because my father worked in the industry and he managed to get me a job. I think it was more just to get us out of the house and get us doing something there. And then kind of from there I ended up in building cleaning, believe it or not. I ended up getting a job with a cleaning company doing various bits and pieces. So I quite liked that, because it was my kind of a passion, was working with people, and doing quite challenging jobs and building cleaning, particularly in the commercial sense, because quite challenging. And then I ended up from that going in and doing a course at Stowe College, of all places, on what they call was management services, but work study would have been the original a concept that most people would understand from there. And from there I actually managed to get a job in one of the district councils in 1990 of all time. So it was Renfrew District Council. I got a job there as a cleansing supervisor, so looking after, I think it was the commercial refuse collection side and the skip hire side there, and that kind of got me into the whole concept, and I've never managed to get away from it since. So I've been in and out, as I say, a few local authorities in terms of obviously Hamilton, South Lanarkshire, Falkirk, where I think I probably met yourself, Alistair.
You're I'm not sure many people know, but you're the reason that we do waste compositional work as Albion, because you were you were the person that had a conversation with me one day and said, can you do such and such? And me being very naive said, oh yes, of course we can.
Well, it was this mad idea that we were trying to do stuff with waste, but we didn't actually know what was in the bin to start with. So I think we kind of put our heads together and said, look, this would be really sensible if we spent a bit of time figuring out what we're going to target all our resources and our efforts on. And it actually worked quite well, but it was an eye-opener, if I remember rightly. I think it could open my eyes to the thing, that the amount of random and strange things that people could put in a bin and hope the council would make it go away for them.
We're still finding out now, Charlie, I tell you, random things. Yes.
Oh, it was amazing.
And it was very much our first lesson that it actually takes much longer and more time consuming than anybody ever thinks, which is an ongoing problem with waste analysis, but people think it's fairly straightforward and easy, but to get a decent sample size is quite time consuming and quite difficult.
Without a doubt, and just trying to then extrapolate that and get some useful information from it that you can apply across the board. That was really, so it was a good, and that would be, that would be about 20 years ago now.
2003, I would think, Charlie.
About 20 years ago. So there you go. So I suppose from that, apart from working in local authorities, I also spent a bit of time in the private sector, which was interesting, which gave you a bit more of the commercial feel. So rather than just making waste disappear, but how can you do it but make money while you're doing it at the same time? So that was a bit of an eye-opener. So it gave us a kind of unique set of skills, I think, was probably the best way of putting it. Understanding waste, but understanding commercial aspects of it as well, and how that would apply in different situations. So that was quite good. And then obviously working for RAP up in Scotland, which eventually morphed into Zero Waste Scotland. Probably the longest I've ever been in a job. That was about 12 and a bit years.
Honestly?
Honestly, 12 and a bit years. But I mean, apart from that, just a fantastic opportunity to go and be involved in so many different things, so many different projects, and do stuff cross-border as well.
I'd actually forgotten that RAP was the sort of precursor. We've got a habit here of talking about acronyms. Remind us what RAP is. Waste Resource Action Programme.
Action Programme, that was it. Who still go, and a slightly different guys from what they were back in the original days there. And again, probably got to meet dozens of folk, probably including yourself, Jane, as the days at RAP, meeting you in one of your previous roles as well. So again, it kind of helped you to expand your horizons, meet lots of people, see lots of things, but also...
I was going to say, Charlie, I think I met you down in a LIRAC conference down in, I don't know, where is it, Bournemouth?
Oh,
absolutely,
Bournemouth.
yeah.
Aye.
Having had too many glasses of wine.
Well, funny enough, Jane, I'd made a promise that I wasn't going to tell anybody that story, but now that you brought it up...
No, I don't think we'll go any further with that one.
No, definitely. So that was in the Falkirk days. So no, definitely, it just expanded horizons so much for that, and also gives the opportunity to get involved with CIWM, Chartered Institute of Waste Management, in different roles and a bit of freedom for that. So I can obviously show my appreciation for my director and chief executive at the time for giving us that opportunity to go and do these things, because without the support of people in senior positions, it's really difficult for new people in the industry to get that level of knowledge and interest and the kind of wider engagement. And also gives the opportunity to start up the Switch Forum as well. So that came from working with Zero Waste and taking an action forward, which was within the Zero Waste Plan. So that was the opportunity to get a bit more involved in health and safety and kind of workforce development and skills development as well. So, but it gives me quite a broad church of things then that have been involved in all stuff,
Out of all these, what's been your favourite role or your favourite project? What's your...
Probably the Switch one was one because it made such a difference, and it's still going yet as we're all involved in. But I think being able to start something like that from scratch and get a whole load of probably new people as well, which I hadn't been involved in terms of the wider further education sector, other health and safety practitioners in the kind of wider industry through things like kind of other trade organisations. It helped as well. So it was really good, and it was quite rewarding because you could actually start to see people developing We obviously developed a competency framework through Fiona Craig as well, which gave us something that we never had before, which was in the waste industry, was this range of sort of things that we would expect the person to have, but also help people to develop and move on to the next stage themselves. Because particularly at entry level within the waste side, there wasn't a lot, for people to go and grab onto, in terms of
I think it's
to get the next stage.
It's still challenging, Charlie, isn't it? I think when we talked to Gail Martin from CRWM, that was the big thing. Harris, how do we get people? We're going to need lots of people in the sector. How do we get people in the sector? How do we encourage, develop them, and so on? And I don't think we've had a guest yet that's saying, I regret being in the waste sector. Everybody's enjoys it. So, it's a career path that a lot of people. There's lots of kids leaving school that aren't thinking about joining the waste sector at the moment, and yeah, it'd be good if some did actually started thinking about it.
Yes, I mean, sorry,
I was just going to say it's quite interesting because I was at a site with a modern apprentice the other day in Inverclyde for waste management, and he's got a twin brother who also works at the council, and his twin brother's doing an MA in business development, and they were chatting, and the guy, the one who was doing the one on waste, he says, "Oh, mine is so much more interesting than my brother's," and I'm thinking that's really cool. I mean, he's 17, and it's nice to hear that.
Aye, definitely. I mean, I suppose part of the thing was to try and get that people to come into the industry, and particularly one of the things that's eye-opening about where I am at the moment is obviously we're involved in an industrial process which has jobs that are quite common out there in terms of engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, various things like that. So these are skills that are already being used in other industries, but they can come in and be used and developed for our industry as well. And also the contractor's fantastic at bringing on local talent in terms of apprenticeships, dealing with local companies and developing the staff that they've already got. And the council's really good at that as well. I mean, I think we were talking about the other day, one of the meetings, we were taking on some like 12 or 13 apprentices this year, and already had some like 50 apprentices in training. So, I mean, it's really good in terms of that. And I think it's to bring new people on and give them skills, but also gives the council a workforce for the future as well, if those people decide to stay and decide to take up full employment with the council. So it's an interesting one to do. But a kind of mantra I've always had myself is like to try and help people to always improve. And that can be quite a painful thing because you bring them in, they get better, and then they leave because you can't offer them that next stage. But I think I can't be selfish. I just have to let that happen because it's natural for people to do that as well. And probably my career, because I jumped about jobs as much, it wasn't probably the done thing when I was doing it, but it's a done thing now, where people will move where the opportunities are rather than waiting for the opportunities to arise. And sometimes where you work, those opportunities are quite rare. So it is an expectation that people will move on. And it's just learning to cope with that as well. But no, I've always tried to sort of try and nurture people wherever I can. And it stands in good stead for the future as well.
Yeah, I share your pain with people moving on. We quite often develop people and think they're getting quite useful to us, and then they see new opportunities, and 9 times out of 10 you can't, the opportunity's great for them, and you're happy for them, but at the end of the day it's like,
you just got to start again with somebody else.
It is sometimes a bit frustrating.
I know, definitely. I mean, I never thought all the years ago when I was probably standing shampooing somebody's carpet about 35 years ago that I'd be looking after a multi-million-pound project and sort of try to look after some of the most environmentally challenging times that we've got as well. So interesting there. But I kind of still have those wider interests in terms of the CIWM, being involved in some of the centre council activities there, and also the ISVA, the International Solid Waste Association. So we're on the international group for that as well. And again, you forget that whether we don't think we're advanced as a country in terms of how we treat waste, we're miles ahead of lots of other nations out there. And I know that was a passion of yourself, Alistair. So it's just trying to sort of see if we can do our help there. But it's a big challenge, particularly as other countries try and develop and try and get the same kind of quality of lifestyle as we've got, and the volume of waste and the complexity of it is challenging.
So Just looking at your current role, because you were just talking quite a lot there about different things. So what is your ultimate aim? What are you trying to achieve through your sort of current role? Is that making people recycle more, or what's your sort of...
I think the ultimate aim is obviously to try and get the residual waste to where it should be in terms of the minimum amount of waste we can get to, I suppose, to recover the energy from, Jane, and maximise the recycling for that. Obviously, from a contractual point of view, we need to manage that carefully with our contractor, but I think we're lucky enough that we've got the type of contractual situation where we can reach where we want to get to and still have a valid and a disposal arrangement there that's commercially viable for everybody.
Yeah, that's what you were saying before, isn't it? It's balancing the commercial side against the, you know, the nice to haves and all that kind of stuff, and it's making sure you've actually got the sort of contractual arrangements in place that you can improve things, rather than, you know, it just being stuck there and new technology comes along and you just can't do anything with it.
I think it was to try and get to the stage as well where we, I suppose, recycling and energy from waste don't compete for the same materials, you know. But things are moving on quite quickly in terms of the decarbonisation side, trying to get plastics out, and sort of a credit to our contractor as well, as they don't want recycled materials either, so they're pushing back on us all the time in terms of what we're sending them, making sure that it's the minimum for them, because obviously it helps their processes, but it's from a reputational point of view for them, they want to be disposing of stuff that they just can't do anything else with. And obviously it's minimising landfill as well for that. So it's a bit of a balance to try and keep and try and make, but it does work for us. But as you do have to have a good quality working relationship with your contractor to be able to have these conversations with them as well. As you can imagine, you can get lost in detail with a fairly complex contract that we go with a long-term energy and waste arrangement.
I suppose as well, I mean, based on all of your roles that you've had, you must have taken away all these different habits and changes and opinions around waste and waste management, and you get home and it's like, no, you've got to put it in that bin, or you've got to put it in that bin, or we're going to have something here that crushes the tins. Is that what you've got at home, Charlie?
Well, I have been accused of being the bin police several times. It's quite funny because we have obviously got quite a big family, and some of my relations would use me as the ogre. So they would say, if you don't put that in the right bin, I'm going to get Uncle Charlie to come and have a word with you. Not the position in the kind of family relationship I was hoping for, but it's part of that. But it's funny, actually. It's probably something that I say quite a lot. Is I think we forget we're quite close to the industry. We understand it. We know what's what, and we take it for granted that everybody else should have the same level of knowledge. So you do have some really odd conversations with people about some basic kind of things that they could be doing. And I find that in general, we just can't sit back and let things go. You have to kind of constantly refresh the message, do something different, challenge people, or old habits will just slip back in, you know. And we used to sort of say, and it's not probably common, but it's too easy to get rid of waste. You know, it's people, we just make it too easy, too convenient, you know, and there's this pushback that we should be trying to make it even slightly more difficult, so as the right thing is easier to do rather than the wrong thing being easy to do. But I think in that I'll still be saying that message in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely, totally agree with that one, Charlie. In terms of it's obviously not all work, no play. How do you get away from the waste management field?
I suppose we did a lot of things, but I quite like tinkering with cars. So for a while, I had a couple of older cars, but I think it was more effort than less reward in terms of time spent for being able to do it. And I think I still like the idea of thinking about an old car, but I'll probably need to wait for retirement for that one to come at some particular point. And I got, of course, sort of keeping things going at the house and doing various other things. And did a bit with, I suppose, the guide dogs as well for a while back. Remember, I think we did some charity work for them, but also used to look after and board guide dogs that were in transit for training for a while. And that was just really after that we had a dog of our own and lost her, which is quite young, and we sort of thought, what else could we do that would help? So, and having a great kind of love for Labradors as well, which most guide dogs are. So we've got one, but I think a few years ago we got one of our own, so I'm back into being a dog owner and a regular dog walker again.
Jonathan Love, who used to work for us, is now at Leaving Seat. His mum used to train guide dogs.
Yes.
So she was one of the trainers.
Yes, well, you get to get a puppy trainer, which I think must be the hardest, because basically they live with you full time for a year and a half.
And then you pass on. I must be tough.
But we did the boarding thing, which was basically ideal if you want to be a part-time dog owner, where you drop it off in the morning and you pick it back up at night and you just keep it at the weekends. So you got all the good stuff, and it lets you work as well. But it was good. But same thing, 6 months, 8 months, you build up a relationship with these wonderful, gorgeous dogs, and you have to sort of give it back at the end. I think the first couple were a bit of a challenge, but you get kind of used to it after that.
My next door neighbour does the same. She boards, she'll get guide dogs for the weekend or whatever when the puppy trainer, or what is the puppies when the puppy trainers want to go on holiday. So we get all these gorgeous puppies, and they're just so cute, and you just think, oh. I did think about a full-time one, but no.
How do we always manage to get this podcast onto the subject of puppies? I've managed this for the last few weeks.
I don't know if you remember, Alistair, but we did I think it was the CIW Christmas lunch, and we sponsored the charity because I was chair at that particular point. I chose the Guide Dogs for the Blind Scotland. Yeah. And one of the jokes that we told was that somebody had asked how much it was to train a guide dog, right? So it was something like £56,000, So I said, well, somebody says, well, how do you know that? I says, well, I went to the shops one day and I tied the dog outside to go and get a lottery ticket. And I told the girl at the reception that the guide dogs had done that. And she said, my God, you've tied a £56,000 dog outside a shop to go and get a lottery ticket. So that was the thing. So that just shows you the idea of the amount of money that's invested in these animals to sort of get them to help people. But no, really good, worthwhile charity, and still support them to this day. So
yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating how they train them. I just can't get my head around how they train them, and you see them being trained for other things as well, for hearing and for other. It's just incredible. So what's next for you in your career? You got plenty to do at Dundee.
Plenty to do at Dundee. I say, working with a fantastic team here in Dundee, and still very supportive in terms of the work that we do in terms of CIWM, and working with sort of APSI in terms of some of the waste management stuff as well. So it's sort of complementing the role that I've got and anything that's coming through. But as you know, the landscape's constantly changing as well in terms of policy, and we've got obviously a circular economy bill starting to progress through, which has got some major implications for the wider industry. So happy to support the council, both councils here, and how that will affect us in terms of our waste treatment and disposal options, but some of the wider strategic things as well. So there's a lot to do. I don't think nothing is standing still at the moment, as you can imagine.
Dundee itself is a pretty thriving city now.
The city is absolutely going like the clappers. There's so much happening up here in terms of, I suppose, new initiatives, regeneration, even house building. There's new houses being built all the time, and folk are moving. It's a very compact area as well. So I think and just that itself kind of generates a kind of atmosphere and a sort of a culture here, which is, I think, a bit different in terms of what I've been before. So it's really good. It's not the size that everybody knows everybody, but certainly there's that sort of I suppose that kind of atmosphere and culture about here where everybody goes out and just enjoys themselves, and obviously huge 2 universities as well, so huge influx of students each year as well. And I've noticed that the kind of atmosphere in the city centre is quite electric sometimes as well during term time, I suppose. So that's part of it.
It's quite a nice city now, isn't it, with the V&A, and now they've done the train station and everything as well. It looks pretty impressive.
And more
looked like a building site at one point, but now it's definitely getting there.
Definitely, and some investment as well in terms of new builds within the city centre. In terms of, I think British, British Telecom and Care Scotland as well in terms of social work. So there's new builds there, and the kind of the harbour side as well has been dramatically remodelled. So it's a really fantastic thing. And obviously, you've got the Radio 1 big weekend was up in Dundee this year as well. So I mean, the place was absolutely crazy for the best part of 4 days, plus all the preparation and the takedown afterwards. So you can imagine. So it's got that, and there's lots happening. So it's good.
Now that's interesting, Charlie, because we were talking about festivals and things, and all the rubbish and the waste coming from the festivals last time. Was it an overnight thing? Was there kind of tents left? Does any did they have a recycling thing on board? Was there any I'm feeling really quite fascinated by this.
It was obviously done by a whole. Well, good thing was it wasn't a kind of camping or tent city or anything like that, so we didn't have that issue similar to Tina Park we've had. But it's a huge influx of people, and it was obviously done up at the park, which as well. So the council, in partnership with the BBC and their contractors, set up the whole waste management infrastructure there. So recycle and recovery, and there was a lot of reuse type things as well in terms of the cups and what they were trying to do, and a fair bit of sort of a compostable containers for foods and things. So things that you would expect to see at a kind of modern venue, that they were installed there, and obviously the council were part of that infrastructure. So it was huge. You can imagine in terms of something like 80,000, 90,000 people over a weekend, coming up, and obviously all the other facilities within the city as well in terms of hotels, pubs, restaurants, or whatever. They obviously benefited from it as well.
Sounds good, actually. I think I went to the Radio 2 big weekend, which is kind of more my sort of age group. Maybe the Radio 1 would be slightly too young for me now, unfortunately.
Somebody did tell me that as the audience had to be helped up for the standing ovation. Is that right?
Absolutely. So back to you and back to the job. So is there one fact that you would want to share from your job or sector that you think people might not know? You've shared a few facts already, but is there anything you think this is what people need to know?
I suppose the big thing for me is just probably when people underestimate the importance that the sector has, not just in the economy but the environment. I think it's because it just happens in the background every day without people noticing it or whatever. And when it doesn't happen, then that's when you're doing it. But also probably at the moment is it's quite prominent is the climate change and impacts of that, and just making people aware of the importance that the sector's got and that, and helping that and reducing that climate change impact. And you probably see in my lifetime, I've seen obvious changes to the climate, and this last couple of years, I think it's the most dramatic I've ever seen. So it's there. But I think probably for my takeaway, Jane, would be to try and reinforce the importance that we've got in climate change and how we can help that and how we can contribute to mitigating or removing some of the causes of it.
And I suppose the waste to energy adds quite a bit into that as well, isn't it? So you're talking more of a sustainable kind of circular economy rather than using raw materials to produce your energy.
Definitely, and I think it's important that we don't just stand still. We can contribute that. I mentioned earlier on some of the decarbonisation sort of initiatives as well. So to try and help follow through for that, a big issue for everybody will be money. But how do you invest in that new infrastructure and changes? So they will be one of the many challenges there'll be for doing that. But I don't think it's a reason for standing still. I think we need to keep going with it, and obviously, probably being one of just a handful of these types of projects in Scotland, that we're going to be at the forefront of that as it comes along. So we're going to have to work quite closely with our contractor and some of the wider industry as well. But I think everybody's aware of it, but just getting to that next stage is a challenge.
So leading on from that, Charlie, any habits or changes that could suggest to the public to how they improve managing their waste or improve the recycling, or the obvious one I always rant on about is stop buying as much crap that you need to throw out.
I think there's a couple of that is buying what you buy in the first place, the consumption issue in terms of we buy more than we need, but also in the fact that the big challenge I think for everybody is to try and get the food waste thing sorted. It's probably the one that's got the most resistance or pushback from householders, and also from a local authority point of view, is trying to come up with a service that meets that, in terms of it's regular, it's easy to use, and you've probably seen quite a lot of the things in the news just now is poor storage of waste as well, encouraging the rat infestations and things. So to try and sort of link all that, that there is a good service and system out there, use it, maintain it, and work hard at it. But you're right, I mean, it's particularly the household waste one it's the most challenging, because you've got every sort of you've got people who are really compliant and they'll do everything, and you've got other people who it doesn't bother them, they're not interested, and it's trying to sort of bring it together. And it's probably getting to the stage where you'll get to a certain point where you'll not be able to take it any further. Obviously some of the stuff for legislation that's being proposed as well has got things like fixed penalty notices and stuff in it as well. Whether that works or not, obviously, will be the challenge, and whether there's several schools of thought on it. I think we need some sort of a way of compelling the public to do it, but actually using or installing that particular action might not give you the results that you're hoping for.
Might cause a rebellion.
It might cause a new set of problems in terms of non-compliance or clogging up the court system or whatever.
See, I personally, we've talked about this before, I personally don't get the thing about not using your food waste system, because to me, food waste in a residual bin that's only been collected every 3 weeks or 4 weeks is a much bigger health risk, contamination risk, call it what you like, than a food bin that you place out once a week and get collected.
Yep.
And the service is there, and it's just the sheer number of people not using that service is incredible.
It's probably the number one challenge, I think, in terms of local authority household. I mean, food waste itself is probably the biggest challenge I think we've all got to try and get folk to comply with that. And it's interesting because being the bin police here, I'm following everybody about, wondering what they're doing. But I suppose as well, there's like kind of lifestyle things as well. When we do a lot of cooking, we do a lot of prep here, so we do produce a lot of food waste in terms of peelings and things like that. Whereas you've got the sort of a convenience food type thing, where you don't have the prep, you've only got the kind of leftover, if there are any leftover type things. So it's in everything in between, so it's trying to come up with a system that matches that. And I think we've got that at the moment, but it's just get people to use it.
It's getting the vast majority to use it, yeah. So we always ask all our guests for one bit of industry jargon or an acronym that maybe means a lot to you, or you love, or you hate, so now's your chance.
I know, it's an interesting question. I can't think of one at the moment that annoys me as much. I think it's probably a bit I can say away from acronyms, because I think there's so many of them. I think we had something like a 10-page acronym buster at one particular point. I suppose my tip for that, rather than what's annoying me, is to try and look, if somebody mentions something, is to try and Google it quietly in the background to understand it, so as you don't look daft.
I've seen myself doing that plenty of times when I've been in a meeting. What does that mean?
I know, and it's like, and some of the acronyms are not very intuitive either. You can't work them out yourself. You really need something. So I think probably for that point, I think they all annoyed me. It's just the ones that I don't understand is to try and look intelligent enough to be able to, until I find out what they actually mean.
That's good. And then the next one is really your moment where you're given a magic wand to sort one thing out in the waste sector.
I suppose for that point of view, I would think probably that would be my food waste thing. If I could get 50% of the people to use a food waste facility.
Higher than that, Charlie. We need higher than that.
No, 50% would be a good start, I think, for that, and realistic as well. I think if just half the people would do it, then the other half have got a chance of coming along with them.
Do you not think, in a sense, that's quite, like, the food waste system's been in for quite a long time, most authorities. The fact that we're, you as a waste professional are sitting thinking 50% would be good, is that not a bit of a failure of how, the whole waste sector has sort of failed to get this across to the public?
No, I think it's a positive thing. I think, Alistair, I think it's this. I think the problems I've seen in the past is we've been over ambitious, right? And what
And
happens
thought we'll
is
get
that
100% or get
aye,
90%.
it's like,
whatever.
and it's not, and I hate the word aspirational, right? So I like to think it would be good if we could actually get that, and then I can build on that rather than saying 90% of the people. When it's like 95% people can access a system, but a third of them can actually get around to using it. So it's things like that, So I wasn't being like less than. I'm trying to be.
Less than ambitious.
I'm trying to be realistic, right, about how I do it. But if we can get half people to do it, I reckon the other half would be an easier job than trying to do it. Start off from where we are at the moment, and I know that, and I've been involved in the whole food waste rollouts and funding and various things. And you do get this initial sort of a enthusiasm for it, and then it wanes. And it's just at that bit that it wanes that you should be able to step in and try and boost it back up again. And given how much food it is at the moment, I mean, the cost that each household must be throwing out must be phenomenal.
Oh, we keep going on about the waste analysis when you're lifting out whole packs of pre-packed herbs and lettuces and this. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just thrown out. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible.
Aye, definitely. And I remember it was obviously the buy one get one free thing was the bit.
Yeah.
Went through it, and I remember one example years ago, and I think it was something like pineapples. That was buy one get one free, right? I mean, and people were taking them home and then figuring out they didn't know what to do with the first pineapple, never mind what to do with the second one, and they ended up finding their way into the transfer stations and bouncing about all over the floor and stuff like that, like footballs, and it was like, I mean, you can imagine the power of some of the big supermarkets, the number of items that they stock, and if they sell 1,000 pineapples and 1,000 free ones, that's 2,000 pineapples in circulation for people to find out what to do. So it was things like that, that I suppose that's they've been shamed into taking some of these things away now. But given the current kind of financial situation, that I don't blame anybody for taking advantage of anything they can get that's going to get them something cheaper. But it's just being sensible about it, not buying something that's just going to go off in the fridge or whatever before they get a chance to use it.
I would have loved to have seen the pineapples bouncing around those.
Oh, that was hilarious. That was the only good thing is they were in a food waste collection vehicle, but it was just hilarious watching about. And you can imagine it's a bit like blueberries, isn't it? Is the footprint for them to get here to this country just to get in the supermarket shelf is enormous. They've come from halfway across the world. Probably in an airplane, Well,
the story from and in fact, this is another idea for a future guest for us is getting somebody on from an anaerobic digestion plant, because the story is always that after Christmas that the anaerobic digestion plant can't actually cope with the richness of the food waste that has been put into the because it's the leftover turkey and the Christmas pudding and all the rest, and they have a real problem with the AD plant at that sort of month of January because the food that's going in is far too rich for the AD plant.
Yep. I remember my first trip to an anaerobic digestion plant, so I didn't know what to expect. So I nearly had to sell my car afterwards because I couldn't get rid of the smell out of it. Right. Because I stupidly put the overalls and the stuff in the boot for a couple of days as well before I took them out. So I can imagine.
Let them fester a little bit.
No, so now if I ever get invited to one, it's a paper suit.
Yeah, that's what it's like after the waste composition analysis stuff as well. It's like paper suit that goes in the bin, and sometimes I'll come back into my car. Sometimes you'll get this vague whiff, and it's like, oh no.
Oh. Well, the good thing is that if you go to the pub, you'll get served right away because there'll be nobody standing next to you.
Yeah, nobody's going to talk to you. You're going to like Billy No Mate sitting there just stinking. Anyway, in terms of like your career and in the waste industry, and you were talking about switch earlier and how getting people into the waste industry is really important. So what advice would you give to anybody wanting to follow a similar career path or wanting to get started? You've got these graduates coming out, or not even graduates, guys coming out from school and stuff. What sort of advice would you give them to start in the waste industry?
I would think sort of obviously go in with your eyes open, because it is it can be quite challenging to start with, but also in terms of the organisation if they are looking to join it, look for somewhere which has got that sort of or even a modern apprenticeship if there's one available, just to go in and get probably the right word isn't a taste for the industry. That's probably a bit too much, but but again, there's sort of an idea of what it's about and what you want to do. I mean, I think I probably come from an era where you were fortunate enough you could bounce in and find your own way, but it's quite specialist now in terms of what's there. So if it is recycling, if it is a strategic role, or if it's maybe an operational role, part of that. And also, I think probably the idea is to shadow somebody who can offer that sort of a longer term kind of experience, because it's changed so quickly in the last few years. A bit of that kind of knowledge is lost about where it used to be and how we got there for that. So it's quite a thing. And again, probably if folk want to come into the industry naturally, what is it they're coming in to do? Just be quite firm about what part of the industry you want to be in.
Here we go. I think that's us run out of questions for you, Charlie. Thank you very much for your time.
No, good. Always good to sort of have a catch up. And you know me, I've got a story for every occasion. So
absolutely, absolutely.
I look forward to many more years in the industry. I think it's probably everybody. I see around about me, everybody's sort of deciding that I've had enough. I think it's a great industry to be in. So
I think the problem is, Charlie, we're actually becoming a bit of the old guard of the industry now. So that's what we've got to protect against.
I know. I used to look about to see where all the old grey guys were, and then it suddenly dawned on me, I am the old grey guy. But no, some good people out there, and some folk you know yourself who have probably retired and left the industry now, but they were quite influential in sort of helping to get me where I am and giving me the same advice I try and give to other people as well. Starting off. So hopefully that helps, and it was great to catch up with you two guys as well.
Thank you very much.